We may have never experienced all the awesomeness that Marvel brings to our screens with every new movie released if they never survived bankruptcy at some point. As shocking as this sounds, there are several other famous companies today that face the threat of extinction. Well, here's a look at some of these companies that went from zero to billions. Converse. If you've never heard of Converse, that's probably because it's now owned by one of the largest footwear companies in the world. Before that, this American shoe company was doing amazingly well in the 20th century as one of the biggest brands in the industry. They made sports shoes that people fell in love with quickly and pretty much dominated their side of the market. But trouble came knocking first with an antitrust lawsuit. Converse, its parent company Ultra and Goodrich, were meant to enter into an agreement where Converse would lease for 12 years and have an option to buy the Goodrich rubber canvas footwear plant in North Carolina. However, Goodrich instead asked for a permanent injunction against this transaction, which gave the company some bad attention. Not long after moving on from this lawsuit, Converse had another issue to battle with. New competitors like Puma, Adidas, and Nike were coming on the scene and weren't leaving anything to chance. They came with guns blazing, wanting to take over as much of the footwear industry as they could. Unfortunately, Converse could not dominate as much as they used to, and these companies slowly took over. Finally, in 2001, the company had no choice but to file for bankruptcy. That's not the end of their story. Just 2 years later, Nike came with an offer of $309 million for Converse, and this was a deal they were only too willing to take. Handshakes were exchanged, and today, Converse is still in full operation as a subsidiary of Nike. Texaco. Once upon a time, Texaco was the king of the oil industry, but that changed quickly in 1984. This was a year that the company started a legal drama that would last for 3 years. Getty Oil had already agreed to a merger with Pennzoil. However, Texaco came on the scene with a much larger offer that Getty Oil couldn't refuse. With that, they snatched Getty Oil from Pennzoil and left the company fuming at being cheated out of a deal they thought was signed, sealed, and delivered. Angry at being cheated, Pennzoil sued for damages, and a jury awarded them $11 billion. Apart from the fact that this was the biggest civil verdict in the U.S. history at the time, it was officially the beginning of Texaco's woes. Despite how well they were doing, they didn't have the capacity to drop that much money for losing a lawsuit. At first, they offered to settle with Pennzoil for $2 billion, but the company refused. I guess they were really angry after they lost that deal. Unfortunately, Texaco had to file for bankruptcy in early 1987 and then emerged from it in December of that same year, as Pennzoil finally agreed to a $3 billion settlement. Having got that behind them, it was time for them to pick up the pieces of what they had left and stop the company from crumbling. They did this successfully until 2000, when Chevron swooped in to save the day. As one of the biggest oil refining companies in the world, acquiring Texaco helped the company find its feet quickly, and with that, Chevron became the second largest oil company in the United States. It was a win-win situation for all involved. Chrysler. Even companies in the automobile industry are not immune to the long hand of bankruptcy. As we can see in the case of Chrysler, the Great Recession affected a lot of sectors and sent companies spiraling to the bottom. One of them was Chrysler. This company didn't have the ability to operate as it should and ended up defaulting on debt that was about $4 billion. This American car manufacturer was neck-deep in debt, and it looked like there was no end in sight. In 2009, they filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, but the United States Treasury saved the day by investing about $12.5 billion in Chrysler. This helped the automobile company survive the worst of the Great Recession, but they weren't able to pay back the funds completely. The department lost more than $1 billion when they sold their shares, as Chrysler was only able to pay back $11.2 billion. Still, it would have been much worse if the European carmaker Fiat hadn't come to the rescue. In 2014, they bought Chrysler, and there has been nowhere else to go but up since then. American Airlines Group. What is today one of the biggest transportation companies in existence and arguably the biggest airline in the entire world, also surprisingly almost got consumed by bankruptcy at some point. American Airlines has been known as an aviation giant since it first came to life in 1930. While U.S. Airways, on the other hand, which was founded in 1939, was doing amazingly well in its own right. Both companies ended up crossing paths when American Airlines' parent company, AMR Corporation, filed for bankruptcy in 2011. After the tragic events of 9/11, luxury quickly went out of commercial aviation as the United States economy battled a devastating recession. During this time, American Airlines had more than $25 billion in assets, but was over $29 billion in debt. So in 2013, these two giant airlines formed a merger that gave birth to the American Airline Group. However, the path to the merger was no easy one, as they had to suppress the challenges of federal antitrust laws. The plaintiffs argued that the merger would result in a company that would operate more like a monopoly because of its dominance. The judge at the time believed that they hadn't proved their point effectively and ruled in favor of American Airlines. But it turns out that these plaintiffs may have been right after all, given how massive this airline is today. Six Flags. Six Flags has been famous as a company that runs several theme and water parks across North America. In one of their many locations around the country, you would find some of the biggest and fastest roller coasters in the world. But they had to go on a very different roller coaster ride of their own when they declared bankruptcy in 2009. The company was neck deep in more than $2.7 billion of debt with no chance of paying it back. However, it took a lot of restructuring to survive the hurdle. Six Flags basically had to wipe out all the shares they had before bankruptcy and apply to list newly issued stocks to the New York Stock Exchange. They also focused their strategy on making their amusement parks more family-friendly and gave up control to hedge funds. It's all turned out better than ever, and they emerged from bankruptcy in 2010 after wiping off more than $1 billion of their debt. Today, Six Flags is a big name in the entertainment industry, with their parks thriving now more than ever. Marvel. Marvel was the king of comics, with millions of children saving up their allowances just to buy every issue of their comic books. This was a company that gave us most of our superheroes, including Spider-Man, Daredevil, Captain America, and Iron Man. But do you know that Marvel actually filed for bankruptcy in 1996? As shocking as this may sound, this was before they dived into the movie-making industry. In the years leading up to 1996, the company started reporting huge losses that threatened to crumble the brand. Marvel tried to save itself from full destruction by laying off 275 employees. However, these employees that took the fall for the company were not enough really to get back to its winning ways. Still, Marvel was reorganized while they faced both internal and legal battles. Nothing in the world prepared the comic book heroes for the real world, especially when they got delisted from the New York Stock Exchange. Redemption came in 1998 when Marvel agreed to a merger with Toy Biz, and this gave birth to the Marvel Enterprises we know. But that's not all. After managing to claw its way out of bankruptcy, Marvel was bought by Walt Disney for $4 billion in 2009. And today, well, the results speak for themselves. Marvel movies are pretty much everywhere, and the company earns billions of dollars with almost every movie release. They're still heavily in the business of bringing entertainment to their millions of fans around the world, and they're doing this successfully as a subsidiary of Disney. How cool is that? Now you know some of your favorite companies that actually battled with bankruptcy, and that's a wrap. Is there any company that you think should be on this list? Let us know in the comments. Did you like this video? Well, we're always posting amazing content like this, so don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out. Thanks for watching.